And we're back. We're looking at some automation stuff that I did a little while ago and that I've been working on, and it's in Laravel. So before the break, I had a look at the work that I've done on this latest iteration of the codebase, and I want to continue that work, particularly in the queue jobs department. So I've already done the fetch command, which gets modules from packagist. I've done the fork command, which renames them and clones them to my local system so I can analyze them. The next step is analyzing them, which is what I want to do. So I've got this existing inspection command. And again, it's got an interesting signature. So I had this idea that I would have an optional parameter where you could say only do this kind of inspection. So you could say only do the does this module have a license file inspection? And then it would do just that, right? Is that what that command's actually used for? No, that's totally not what that command's used for. Okay, so this parameter in this instance, I've got a very similar one in a future command, we'll see. But in this instance, the only one says only inspect this module. Okay. So there's that. If that's not set, or you want to start the inspection from like midway through all the modules, you can give an offset and then it will start at that point. But what this does is it fetches all or the specific module you want and creates an instance of a few instances of checks. Now this method right down at the bottom says go to config and get the checks config, and then for each create a new instance of that. The checks config looks like this. So I have a bunch of checks for specific things. Does the module have a changelog? Does it have an editor config file? Is it set up in Scrutinizer? And each of those things represents something to inspect about the module. So this method creates instances of those and returns it. And then for each of the modules, if there's an inspection, we do some stuff. In other words, if it hasn't got an initial inspection, that's like a precondition. If it hasn't got an initial inspection, don't do anything more. But if it has, then go there and check out master of the upstream. Create a default context. So this is just some initial global information for each of the checks to be able to use. And then go through each of the checks and change this global information. It's like a context array. It's called context even. It's a context array. And it goes through each of the checks, each check generating a new context. So this is the chain of responsibility pattern that I'm loosely implementing here. And as long as the checks aren't doing something massive like just not returning a context or deleting everything, they should be able to append to this context with relevant data. At the end, I work out a module score based on like the score that's been added to by each check and the weighting of each, and I work that out to a percentage. I have some debugging here for if it's above, like if the module's improved or if it's gone down in quality, improved or declined. What's the correct antonym there? Improved, whatever. But I'm no longer going to need these because I'm going to do all of this processing in a queue job. Then I unset some stuff that's no longer relevant to the module and I update the inspection with the correct context. So this is perhaps a little brittle. If people do checks that adhere to the interface but screw with the data, it can break this process, but I'm fairly confident that's not going to be a huge problem because there are good examples of what the checks do, and it's just it's developer error at that point and down to like documentation being bad. It's not necessarily a fault of the system. It needs to be brittle to be able to do interesting things. Anyway, that's what this thing does, and I want to refactor this. So I don't want to do all of this stuff inline anymore. I want to create how am I going to do this? Because I essentially need to do all these checks in a queue job, right? I need to still create the checks. I need to still run through them with this context and update the inspection. I'm just doing one inspection for one module per job. That seems right. Okay, great. So what do we do? Well, we begin by making a job. So let's see, inspect module job. And when you do this command in Artisan, then you get a file in this folder. Yay! And I've enhanced. Well, I've set the default job that's over here to use these things already. So I don't need to do that in each module. I can delete this line and do the formatting that goes with that. What I do need to do though is I need to use this serializes models trait, because I'm going to store a model instance in this job, and those don't serialize unless you do this kind of thing. They don't serialize well. So I'll delete this comment because it's useless to me. And the thing I'm going to serialize is an inspection. Is that what I want to serialize? What do I do in this command by default? I don't want to serialize an inspection. I want to serialize a module. That's what I want to do. Because I'm going to get a list of modules, and I don't care about the internals of that in the command. Okay, so this module, let me just use shortcuts for this. Initialize fields. Update PHP doc. This is why I use PHP Storm. It really is. There we go. So that stuff's all done. I need a space between this. Why isn't it putting a space between that? That's pretty weird. Anyway, I'm going to inherit doc here because it looks good to me and it's semantically accurate. Now, I need to move the... Let's close. Can we do close to the right? That's pretty weird. I need to basically move the thing that I'm doing for each of these into the task. So I'll do this as a first step. What broke? Something broke. Here we go. Okay. And this needs to change to, in fact, all instances of this need to change to this module. Whoa! Oh, stupid bug. Okay, anyway, this module inspections first. That gets the inspection. Now I know from my forking process that I'm going to create an inspection, but this is probably still a good check to have, and I'll exit early instead of and I created another helpful method. So when you have a job in a Laravel, when you're doing a Laravel job, you have some methods that you can use, like this failed, and that will make sure that the job isn't removed from the queue because it's failed, right? And you can set retry attempts and everything through the CLI, but it doesn't return anything. And what I was having to do is this this pattern the whole time. So I'd rather actually just say this fail, return this fail. And this is a method that I've created here which does exactly that. It says this failed and it returns null, but it basically means that PHP Storm isn't going to give me a big ol' error here because this failed returns void, but this fail returns null. So it's not going to give me an error about returning without an argument. The way I think this should actually work is you should be able to say void or something else, and then you should be able to say return failed, but PHP Storm's still going to say void used and assigned, like the result of a void function assigned. So anyway, returns null. Do I really want to do that? I don't know how I feel about this yet. I may just go back to this failed and return, because I basically want to break out of this. I want to exit early. Now, because I've changed the function, whoa, I'm kicking tables and things. Because I've changed the order of this, I basically need to unindent this a little bit and remove the console logs and warns and all that kind of stuff. So I can get rid of this debugging info. I can import the inspection class. Okay, and then I'm going to do some bug fixing. Now, basically all of the stuff I can hit delete on. Should be able to. Yay, I can hit delete on that stuff. Okay, so now this waiting stuff I need to abstract. I need to move to the inspection job. Private function get points. I also renamed this from waiting to points. As you will see when I do this. Here we go, get points. I also need to get instances of this. Now I did this when I created the migrations earlier, because I wanted to create this inspection table dynamically based on the checks that your config does, the checks that you specify you need in your config. So this code here will essentially do that. I sort of. Do I maybe want to replace this down here? Import this static class. Let's see, instance. Does that essentially do the same thing as I had in the command? So that gets the total weight or the total points for each of these, which is cool, I think. Maybe I should rename this to something more accurate, like get total points. That makes sense. Ooh, I forgot to bring chat up. Ooh. Been watching a King's Quest playthrough and there's this annoying owl that goes woo at just about every point. Anyway, get total points, and then I probably need to return this, return points. Great, so this is going to return all the points based on the instances of the checks that it gets. I kind of need to get instances of this anyway, so I'm probably going to do another method, get check instances, check objects, get check objects. That's better. Private function. Woo! Instances is an empty array, and then I'll make that, and I can kind of remove this check because I'll just say it's an array, but it's also an array of checks. Okay, fine. So now I can replace this with this get check objects. Oops, that didn't work. There you go, object get points. Sweet, and it's detecting that that method exists because of this type check here. So fine, that's good. Get total points. Well, then I can change this where it says context score. Wait, I can change this to this get total points. And if, or maybe I should say total points is this get total points. Maybe I should just change this to total because that's clear enough. So if total is greater than that, because I don't want to do a divide by 0, then I round, so I get a percentage of this stuff. Okay, fine. This get check objects as object. Now it's probably not a good idea to generate these things twice, so I probably want to do static instances. Does that make sense? Or this instances? I don't know. Static instances. I think this is okay. Well, maybe not. Maybe not. If this instances, then return this instances. Else this is an empty array. And add this and return it. Okay, fine. But I need to define this, so add field, and it's private, and it's just going to be null or an array. Okay. So we have a way to get total points, and this is cached after first execution. Fine. So we get the first inspection of a module. If it's not an inspection, if there's no inspection, we just fail and stop running this. Then we get the folder and change directory to the folder. I'm also going to define, do I need to do this here? Do I do any other execs? Not really. Okay, fine. I don't need to define that. I check out the master, and then I create some default context. So I probably want to change these variable names a little bit in a while, but basically I get the safe name, which is like the name of the folder that I've given it. I get the module name, which is the actual package's name, the folder that it's in, the initial score, and upstream to do like checking out and branching off of. And then I get all of the files in that code folder. So if I get this globally once, then it saves repeated lookups for each check that needs to run. So this was like an optimization I arrived at very early because it was taking forever to run them. Anyway, then I run through each of the checks, modifying the context every time with a new context returned. Get the total points, work out the context score, unset a whole bunch of stuff that's no longer relevant, and update the inspection with new data. Now, can I fill these properties? Kinda. I need to find a way of making this more dynamic, because these are all hard-coded, but the migration generates the stuff dynamically. If I look here at inspection, it generates the stuff dynamically. So I kind of need to find a way to make this more dynamic. Do I? The fillable thing. I need to find a way of making the fillable thing more dynamic. Perhaps what I can do is for each context is key value. This will be better. Inspection key is value. That'll be better. So I no longer need to do this, and I no longer need to have this stuff globally fillable. I'll keep module upstream and origin because I set those elsewhere. Now I should be able to just queue some jobs up. So I'll go back into the inspection command and just delete all of this nonsense. Okay, I'll also remove these because science. I'm keen to get this working in the next 2 minutes, which is why. Okay, so let's just get this boilerplate, which I could probably abstract, to be honest, if I'm just copying it straight out of another task. Inspection modules, inspecting modules. What a crude header. What am I, like an ASCII king? Okay, so I get all the modules removing global scopes because I want to, I actually don't, do I want to do this? I don't think I actually want to remove global scopes in this instance because I don't want to inspect things I don't have to inspect. There are columns to be able to ignore modules and all modules by single users and stuff like that. But I don't, and generally I don't want to do that. Like when I'm fetching from packagist, I don't want to create duplicate records just because it hasn't found the ignored ones. And I want to fork everything because I want to have all the code to run to be able to inspect locally. But I don't really have to inspect modules that are being ignored, so I can ignore that. For each modules as module, and I'll get an index of this, and then I want to say something for each of them. Maybe I'll add the offset thing back. Notice how I'm just copying like most of this. That's a good sign that I actually just need to refactor this stuff. Put it in a trait or something. Because it's not even varying slightly, it's just like completely copy. Queuing task for module name, the total count, the current index of that, and then this does inspect module job with the module. Fine. So this dispatch, which means I need to copy this dispatch as jobs trait. which will need an import, and I'll probably need to, no, I don't need to import that job. Fine. So this looks okay. Let's run this quickly. It might break completely. Okay. Artisan HR inspecting. So it's running these things inline now because I'm using the sync queue. What it's doing is checking out, and then it's checking out from the remote, and it's running checks. So does it have certain files and folders and integrations with services? It means this inspection thing should start getting data. And it's getting data! That's amazing! So it's determining the score of these modules, which is fine. User forms should have a very good score by the time it gets there. So we'll see what that looks like. And it's taking time because it's obviously running these things inline. But now I could be running these things in a separate thread. If I use the Redis queue or the Beanstalk queue or just a database queue, I could be running these things in a separate thread, which is great. Okay, so Google Sitemaps gets quite a high score. Let's see. It has a changelog. It has the correct code folder structure. It doesn't have a code of conduct file. It's got contributing. It's got the correct docs folder. Editor config, get attributes, license. It doesn't have a scrutinizer file, but it has a scrutinizer setup because I think I added all the Silverstripe modules to scrutinizer. It has a tests folder, a Travis file, a Travis setup, and type is 0. So I'm putting the wrong field in there. Field type, tiny. Ooh, that's wrong. Okay, fine. So I've got the wrong field type in there. Let's have a look at this check. Now, all of these checks adhere to this check interface, which means they have a certain number of points for each check. They have a column name and a column type for the column they add to store their data, and then they have a run function. So the type check over here says the column name is type, the column type is string, and set the type column. Okay, so is it maybe the migration that's doing this wrong? Inspection. If type is string, then make a string. No, if type is boolean. Okay, fine. Okay, fine. So I've got these the wrong way around. I wanted to handle boolean as a special case and everything else as a string. And later I'll add more types here. Right, so I'll need to do a refresh of the migrations. I'll need to do a fetch for the first few modules. I'll need to do a fork for the first few modules. So this should have fresh data there, and these inspections should all be blank. It should have inspections here though. Oh, it's generating them as part of the fork process. Okay, fine. So this is taking a while because this is querying to see if the module exists with the correct name. And we can actually see that in action. So here's the name and a slash and like funny cases, and here is the open source repo and the package's name, but all lowercase with hyphens for non-alpha numeric characters. So that's fine. Okay. So it's creating these steadily. Let's wait for that to finish. Let's have some water. 15 of these. Come on, can't take that long. It actually can. It actually can. Wow. So how's this weather, huh? Nearly there. 2 more to go, apparently. There we go, that's the last one. Should add. Yes. Come on, synchronous queue. Okay. And that should end it. Okay, fine. It's got those. And then let's go inspect. And this is the command we've just refactored and put into a job queue. And so it should start updating these things. Score and type is Silverstripe module. Great. So it'll keep going through these things. This is slightly faster than the fork command because this does fewer HTTP requests. So there we go. It looks like this is working well. Now each of, no, I'm jumping ahead. I'll wait for this to finish. Actually looks like this is running fine. So, there's a different type there. Composer plugin, Silver Stripe theme. So it is registering dynamic types for this, which is great. I think that's a good place to have a break. So I'm going to be gone for 2 minutes, listen to some music, and I'll see you in a little bit.